evening. Okay. Sorry. Good evening. For those who don't know me, I'm Doris Kennedy, and it's been a year since I've been here, and I welcome you to learn more about the history of Hartland. This year, we are taking you to 1940, the war years. Since this is Canada's 150th birthday, we felt it was appropriate to honor those men and women who sacrificed both their time and their lives to give us the free country that we live in today. At this time, I would like to recognize a very important gentleman in the audience tonight, Cecil Shaw. Cecil, can you stand? Cecil's military service in the Royal Canadian Air Force consisted of active duty during World War II from May 8, 1943 to October 1946. That's 3.5 years. He then continued his service from October 1948 to August the 7th, 1977. That's another 30 years. He was a ward officer. He received the Canadian Volunteer Service Medal, the Victory Medal, and the Canadian Golden Heights Medal. So I really want to recognize Cecil, and we thank you very much for your service. And this evening is dedicated to you, your family, and your fellow comrades.
Thank you very much.
As far as we know, there are only 6 remaining veterans from the Hartland Legion Branch number 24. Cecil being one. The others, James Wasson, Gerald Perkins, Lorne Brown, Harry McLean, and Gerald Stiles. This is an evening to keep those war years alive. Now, next year is the 100th birthday since incorporation of Hartland in 1918. We're already organizing and preparing for this, and we have been for the last 2 years. So it's going to be, this evening, like last year, is a fundraiser for the events for next year. So we appreciate you coming and being a part of this. I just want to kind of give you an idea of what's going to happen in 2018. So bear in mind it's tentative. The dates, August 1st to the 6th, the 6th being New Brunswick Day. It will include the same events of the Potato Festival, however, we are adding much more, such as there may be another Hartland history play, a grand reunion of the Hartland's 3 schools, that's Central Carleton, the Hartland High School, and the Hartland Community School, and that's going to be on August the 4th. But please be aware, you do not have to be the alumni. You just have to have attended or supported the school or live or have lived in the community. So that's a broad range. We want people to be here. We have received tentative permission from the Department of Transportation to close the bridge for a dinner and dance, and that will be held on August the 5th in the early evening after the gospel concert. There will be a book launch on Heber Harold Hatfield, a prominent citizen that played important roles in the Hartland's history. A trivia game with a focus on Hartland history, so get your teams ready. I'm up for grabs. Again, this is tentative. We'll be trying to keep people aware. And saying that, trying to keep people aware, it has been very difficult because since we've lost our own personal paper, we've tried to use social media, which if you are on Facebook, please join the Hartland Memories, or there's a 100th Hartland Alumni Facebook page. We've tried advertising on the radio, the Observer Bugle, posters, flyers, and we still hear people saying, I didn't know about this, and it's very difficult. So you'll see on your table, there's a sheet of paper that's asking for your name, your email address, so that might be another way that we can make you aware of what's going on, if you wouldn't mind filling that out. The other thing is to check on the town of Hartland's website. We try to keep that current as well. So as things happen and we actually make the tentative things secured, we'll let you know. So next year we'll be busy for the committee, and as always, we always need lots of help. So if you can contribute either financially, physically, or through technology, please let us know. And the committee members are my sister Shirley, that you probably all know at the front. Tanya Hawks, Tracy DeMerchant, Julie Culberson, Richard Orser, and Linda Brown. So before I hand over the mic to the hostess, I wish to thank a few people. My sister Ann Kennedy has come to Hartland every week since the 1st of May to direct the play for you, so you can see this tonight. It's kind of amazing how a younger sister can get, you know, the older sister. But thank you, Ann. She can't hear me. I could say anything. She can't hear me. I'd like to thank my husband, Lawrence. Again, I persuaded him to do the lights. For Dean Weeks, he's just incredible to work with. And importantly, of course, the cast. They have been so amazing to work with. They've all come when they've been asked to come. Weekly rehearsals, so I really thank them. Another person I'm very grateful for is Donnie Oliver from Fredericton. He's had tremendous input into this tonight. And though he lives in Fredericton, Hartland still is in the core of his bones. He's lived away from Hartland for 48 years after graduating from Hartland in 1959. He's the son of Bus and Alice Oliver, and probably a lot of you remember them. Following graduation, he worked for 2 years in Hartland's Bank of Montreal. And then in 1961, he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force and served for 5 years. So his interest tonight was personal, too. For the next 33 years, he worked at MBTEL, and then he retired, only to return to ExploreNet in Woodstock until 2011. He says he was retired, so if you need to find him, he's on the golf course. Or I have his email, and a few other things. So we have done a few projects together, and you're about to witness one of our many projects tonight. And so again, Donnie, I thank you. So I'd like to introduce our hostess, Ann Ellis. And Ann is probably familiar to you as well. She's been in the library for many years at Dr. Walter Chestnut Library. So Ann, thank you for taking part tonight. It's all yours.
Thank you, Doris, and good evening to everyone. Before we begin, we have a few housekeeping items. The washrooms are on your corridor to the left. We're asking that all cell phones be turned off. And please, no pictures during the presentation. On display at the back of the room are tables of memorabilia from various veterans of our area. Take your time and browse to see something as simple as a spoon that Bert Clendenning used to eat with during battle time, and the butt of a German gun owned by Clarence Dickinson, taken while in war, and then signed by other members in his regiment. Seeing this collection makes it real. Also during this week, there is another collection on display at the Dr. Walter Chestnut Library until Saturday by Tony Jr. Pacini. TJ, as he refers to himself, primarily collects Carleton York memorabilia. He has been in the military for 10 years. His interest in military history began as a child, speaking to family friends who were World War II veterans. As a youngster, he began building scale models of aircrafts and eventually military dioramas. At age 19, he became involved in living history through reenactment. And from this point, his military collection began. In 2008, Tony moved to New Brunswick from Ontario, and his focus became local history, taking him down the road to collecting Carleton York items. He feels a collection tells a bit of New Brunswick military history, and by doing local displays and collecting, he feels it's one way to keep the memory of those that fought so far from home alive. Tony Pacini is actually here this evening. You'll find him with Jean Haywood at the war display tables, and he has brought a sample of his memorabilia. Another table has a host of items available to purchase, commemorative to Hartland's 100th birthday next year. There are pewter ornaments, folk art prints, raffle tickets for a natural piece of folk art, humdinger cookbooks, T-shirts, flyers of the town's fathers, pewter school pins, Catherine Carn Munn's model of the Hartland High School, and a DVD of the Hartland High School history. Proceeds from the sale of these items will go to the 100th Anniversary Committee. Doris Kennedy has her history books available for purchase as well. Now, it is with great pleasure that I introduce you to a new book this evening, written by Jim Dee. Jim has researched for many years and compiled names and dates of veterans from both World Wars, as well as the Korean and the Boer War. Both he and his wife, Judy, obtained information from visits to churches, cenotaphs, and cemeteries. Countless hours have been spent at the library reviewing newspapers and reviewing websites on their computer. The Hartland Royal Canadian Legion Branch number 24 includes veterans from Stickney, Nosebel, Mount Pleasant, Coldstream, Rockland, Cloverdale, Carlisle, Upper and Lower Brighton, Somerville, Victoria Corner, Glassville, Waterville, Simons, Peel, and of course, Hartland. Copies of this book are for sale and found on the table in the lobby. Tonight's event will be video filmed, as last year's play was. And if you wish to have your own copy of tonight's performance or last year's play, there are order forms at the tables, and they can be left with Shirley Dickinson at the door. Now, on your table is the program for the evening, with songs imprinted from the years of World War I and a survey. The celebration committee asked the audience last year to provide feedback, and they welcomed their ideas. Many suggestions were implemented. Please complete the survey and leave it on the table in the lobby when you exit. The committee thanks you for your input. As well, there's a sign-up sheet for next year's Hartland School reunion. If you plan to attend, and you know that now, please sign up. This will give the planning committee an idea of numbers attending. Thank you. And now, let's begin our evening with a video production like no other. Doris Kennedy and Don Oliver wish to show you a few of the people that enlisted from the Hartland area during World War II and what things were like for them, remembering those who served.
On June the 30th, 1944, an RCAF bomber on a routine flight from Chatham Air Base developed engine trouble just after it flew over Woodstock. From an altitude of 5,000 feet, it had dropped to less than 2,000 feet when the pilot spotted a field in Hartland and decided to attempt a landing. The plane came down with minor damage to a propeller, apart from a shaken-up crew of 4 that was uninjured. The actual landing spot was a field on the F.H. Birmingham farm, which today would be behind where Mary and Donna Smith currently live, and the field in front of the Hartland Community School. The plane was a twin-engine Avro Anson bomber that was used to train pilots during the war, particularly pilots from England. Later that day, an RCAF repair crew arrived from Chatham by truck, and the crew members returned to their base. Since there were a large number of curiosity seekers who came to see the plane, the local militia and high school cadets were put on duty to guard it 4 at a time, 24 hours a day. The plane was entirely overhauled and one of its engines replaced. The field was mowed and a fence taken down, and a pilot arrived from Chatham, and the plane took off without difficulty 1 week later on Saturday, July the 6th, 1944.
My mom, Doris Bessie Stevens, born in Hartland and graduated from Hartland High School in 1939. World War II broke out. She, as well as her sister Elizabeth, volunteered right away to serve in the RCAF. Mom was a corporal and served in filter room operations, tracking enemy and allied activity from Newfoundland. An American military base called Argentia was located there, and due to the limited range of aircraft bound for Europe, they all had to stop and to refuel before heading out into the Atlantic Ocean. This included the American USO entertainment services, and when the USO stopped for gas, they would often entertain. Frank Sinatra landed in Newfoundland and scheduled 2 shows for the local military personnel. Of course, everyone wanted to see his act, including my mom, so Mom and her friends went to see the first show. After the show, Mr. Sinatra sat at a table and fans could line up to get an autograph. Mom had little interest in standing in line, but one of her friends was overexcited and nervous, so Mom volunteered to get one for her. The autograph task completed, Mom reunited with her friends, and off they went to do whatever filter room ops did in their spare time. Before Mom could go very far, she was stopped by a USO official who was part of Mr. Sinatra's entourage. The man said to Mom, "Mr. Sinatra requests your company at dinner tonight if you are available." Mom thought about that. An easy decision. Frank Sinatra was a huge star at the time, and everyone in the area was excited to see him. There was a big reception planned for him at the Officers Club, with all of the top brass in attendance. As the Sinatra entourage, now including one Hartlander, approached the entrance, there was a pause as Mr. Sinatra was stopped at the door by military police. You see, everyone was welcome to enter except one person who was just a corporal and not qualified. What would happen next? Mr. Sinatra is used to getting his way. Maybe the start of World War III? No. Mr. Sinatra looked at the security police and commented, "This place isn't good enough for my date. It isn't good enough for me." He turned around and they left. Mr. Sinatra, with a small group from the USO show, went into St. John's and had spaghetti at an Italian restaurant. Believe it or not, back in the early 1940s, spaghetti was not that common on Canadian menus. Mr. Sinatra was well acquainted with pasta and showed Mom how to eat it by swirling noodles with a fork in a soup spoon. That's how Mom taught me how to eat pasta Frank Sinatra style.
I'll be home for Christmas. You can count on me. Please.
Oh, me name's Abel Rogers, a shareman am I, on a three-masted schooner from Twillingate Isle. I've been the world over, north, south, east and west, but the middle of nowhere's where I likes it best.
This photo of two Victoria Corner men, Harry L. Albright and his brother Robert, was taken in Yorkshire, England just 1 month prior to Robert being killed in action. Harry was stationed in the Canadian Forest Corps in Scotland, and Robert was a pilot in the Air Force. Communicating was different back in the war years. If urgent communications were needed, the telegram was one of the best ways. This telegram was sent by Bert Clendenning from Camp Aldershot in Nova Scotia to his wife back in Hartland. Telegraph $10 immediately, very urgent. War saving stamps were sold by the Government of Canada in December 1918 as a means to raise money to pay the cost of Canada's participation in World War I. For every $4 invested in the stamps, the Government of Canada promised to pay the holder of the stamp the sum of $5 on January 1, 1924, a gain of 25% over 5 years.
Powerful. That was very powerful. Thank you so much to the numerous families that willingly gave the opportunity to view their stories through these pictures. This certainly provided a glimpse of life and times for the soldiers. Now, we are going to show you a different angle of the war years. This time through the eyes of the ones left at home in Hartland. Back in 1927, Sayers Mill on the Becca-Gwimmick closed for good, leaving approximately 100 men jobless. These men worked full-time in the mill from spring to fall, and then during winters, they worked full-time cutting wood for Sayers Mill. It was a major blow to the community and to the economy of our area, and for many families to lose this source of income. With the town already low economically from losing the main industry, the Depression occurred in 1929, lasting well into the 1930s. Prime Minister Mackenzie King, at the time, offered small communities $3,000. Mayor Hatfield took the $3,000 and added to it from the town's budget and created jobs by building a sewer system and a new reservoir and all the piping that would go along with both. This provided some jobs temporarily, but then news came of the impending war. Britain was engaging, which meant Canada would be too. And Hartland and the surrounding communities were very much affected. Doris Kennedy has written a play to provide insight on those that were left here at home. So let's begin the play, titled The Memory Box. I take you now to the porch of Betty Smith, a 95-year-old woman who has lived all her life in Hartland. She can hardly believe she has lived this long. Her husband, Kenneth Smith, died 11 years ago at the age of 84. Betty is about to get a visit from her great-granddaughter, Maddie.
Who's there?
It's me, Graham. Maddie, where are you? Graham, where are you?
I'm on the front porch, dear. Come in, and don't forget to close the door. Oh. Hi, Maddie. How are you, dear?
I'm good, Graham. How are you?
I'm doing well. What are you up to today?
Well, I have a favor. Old Mr. Grant, my history teacher, gave us an assignment to find out how Hartland was affected during the Second World War. Mom and I talked it over, and she suggested I come see you. She said that great-granddad was in the war. So, what do you think? Could you help me out? Do you remember those time periods?
Oh, I remember. It's a time I never want to go through again, and for those of us who lived through it, one we'll never want to repeat.
Oh, that bad, huh? Well, isn't that when you and great-granddad got married? That must have been a happy time.
Well, that was a happy time, but we didn't get married until after the war. See, he enlisted, and like a lot of women, I waited for, my man to come home, and some men didn't. There are things that young people don't understand about the war, Maddie. You study it through the eyes of experts looking back. But for those of us who went through it, what we experienced at home, that wasn't recorded. Now, do you know the direction you want to go with this project?
No, Graham, I have no idea. That's why I'm here.
Well, I may have some things in the attic.
Oh, really? Can I go look?
You sure can. Now, when you get into the attic, under the window, there's a trunk. You open that up. There should be a hat box on top. You bring that down.
Okay, I'll see if I can find it.
She has no idea what she's asking.
Found it. Can I bring it in?
Bring it in, dear.
Phew. It stinks.
Well, what do you expect? Things have been in there for 75 years.
Let's see what's in here. What are these, Graham? They must be pretty important papers if you've kept them over all these years.
Well, they were important at the time. These are your grandfather's medical records and service records and enlistment papers. Oh, my. Let's see. Kenneth Joseph Smith, age 19 years and 5 months. He weighed 147 pounds. My, that was a long time ago. He was such a handsome young man. These are your grandfather's medical records that Dr. Chestnut would have completed for the Army.
Jeepers, Graham. Look at all the stuff he had to have checked out. Vision, ears, kidney, bladder, heart diseases, syphilis, and gonorrhea. Really? They asked that.
They wanted to make sure the men fighting for our country were healthy.
Varicose veins, flat feet, nervous disorder. Did you know he had his appendix out?
I did.
He even has his vaccinations. Smallpox, TYPH. What's that?
That was the typhoid vaccine. He would have had that before he enlisted and went overseas. Conditions there weren't exactly clean. I think he had tetanus as well.
Oh yeah, there it is. Tet Talks. More than once. It says he only went to grade 8. He was an apprentice for an electrician. He worked for Mr. Seeley? I didn't know that. It even has his weekly wage of $10 per week. Wow, that doesn't seem like much.
It was a good wage for the time.
They even list the sports he liked to play. Hockey, baseball, track. Gosh, I'm learning a lot about Great-Granddad. Graham, why did Great-Granddad join the Army? He was learning a good trade. You had just started nursing school, and weren't you guys going together then?
We were.
So why did he join the Army and go off to war?
Wait for the lights. Okay.
Would you just take a look at all these signs, John?
Yeah, I feel guilty every time I walk by one of them. Hey, I heard you went to St. John and enlisted. Is that true?
I did. I got my uniform and papers yesterday. I'm excited to get out of here. Not to leave Betty, but to see the world.
Ha! Thought you had flat feet. Bet Doc Chestnut didn't even look at your feet.
Oh, don't you worry, John. He checked me over real good. I guess I met everything on that long list. So, when are you joining? You know it's our patriotic duty to defend our country.
I already enlisted. I just got back from St. John yesterday. I'm just waiting to see if they'll take me. They said they put me on the reserve list and call. I just hope I can get into the artillery and shoot some of those big guns.
Yeah. You know, Mark and Walter got in, but Jack didn't. His eyes were bad, I guess. Jerry tried to, but his pa put a stop to that real quick. I guess they needed him on the farm. So, why'd you enlist, John?
Well, it's my patriotic duty, and it beats sticking around picking up jobs here and there. Pays better in the Army, and besides, I seem to be getting a lot of attention from the ladies when they found out I signed up. Some say they like to see a man in uniform. So what'd your dad say?
Oh, he wasn't too surprised. Told me to work hard, keep my nose clean, and everything will work out all right. Wait a second, John. I didn't know you were 18.
I'm not, but don't you tell anyone. I look 18, and I didn't have my birth certificate on me, but they filled out the papers anyway. If I don't need to prove it, I should be able to get in. I'm close enough. I'm going to be 18 in a couple months. So, what do you think it's going to be like over there?
Well, to be honest, John, I have no idea. We'll have both training here, Woodstock on the island, maybe Sussex, or maybe even Halifax. It just depends on where they want me and where they need me. But I sure do hope I get deployed overseas where the action is.
Oh, don't worry. you'll see the world, get some action, and come back a hero. And this will all be over soon.
What's this? It looks like a book with tickets.
Oh, it is a book, but it's a ration book. Now this was very important. I needed these to buy certain grocery items like tea, coffee, butter, meat, sugar. The government had rationed some of these items. There was even ration books for gas and tobacco, too.
Really, Graham? You mean you didn't even have enough sugar to make cookies? None of these stores had these items for you guys to buy?
Well, the government controlled everything, Maddie. The two grocery stores, Jinson's and Keith and Plummer's, they were rationed too. All the stores were. See, the government had to ration these items because the soldiers, both here at home and those abroad, they had to be fed. And our allied countries, whose land was occupied during the war, they had to be fed too.
So what you're saying is the people at home couldn't buy any of these things because they had to be sent to the soldiers, right?
That's right.
And because the war was fought on the land in France and other countries joined in, they couldn't produce or grow food, so we had to for them?
Yes, exactly. And the other problem was that the government had asked the farmers to start overproducing. And they had also bargained with the government to keep their sons home to work on the farms. But when the war went on longer than they expected, even the farmers' sons were drafted. And so there was a shortage of labor and a shortage of food.
Okay, I get it now.
So every family received a book of ration tickets. And when they were gone, that was it until the next ones were sent out. And we had to plan and make things do, and sometimes we just went without.
That must explain why this is in here. A recipe for war cake and a cookbook.
Oh, yes, that cookbook. Well, the government wanted us to save money and food, so they'd have things like posters and magazines, and even that cookbook right there, that was filled with recipes, with all kinds of recipes without the rationed items. And we had to be very, very clever, because it was tricky to put a meal on the table when we were living at the poverty level. But no one complained, Maddie, because we just wanted to get our men home.
That would be hard on me. No chocolate chip cookies?
No chocolate chip cookies. And the women, they had to do the jobs that the men used to do. And the young men who weren't old enough, they had to take responsibilities. And we worked hard. But what else could we do? You know, I even had to quit nursing school to go work in Heber Hatfield's dehydration plant.
What's a dehydration plant?
Well, it was a huge building where farmers would take their potatoes and their turnips, and they'd cut them up, put them on trays, and put them in this big tunnel, and they'd blow fans on them. And when enough water was removed, they would package them in tins.
Really, Graham? Tins? Why not bags?
Well, tins were good for dropping from airplanes, and the soldiers could pick them up quite easily. And if they happened to fall in the water, they were sealed.
That's smart thinking.
It is smart thinking. Mr. Heber Hatfield, he was a very smart man. You know, the government had given him a contract to produce these dehydrated vegetables. And all they had to do was add water for the soldiers and be like sitting down to a Sunday dinner. It was often said, men can't win a war on an empty belly. And Mr. Meade, he was a mechanic in Bristol, and he was commissioned to make naval supplies. And the women had to work in those factories, too.
Women worked out of the home? I always thought in those days women were expected to stay home and raise the family.
Well, things had to change quickly during war times. You know, I'm not so sure, Maddie, that women would have stepped aside for the returning men to fill those jobs. But one thing I am sure of, that the role of woman has changed dramatically since the Second World War.
Oh, hi, Mildred. You look like you're in a hurry. Are you just going to work?
Oh, actually, I just finished my shift at the dehydration plant, and now I'm heading over to Boyer's to help them bring in their potatoes.
Oh, good.
The boys, along with Bobby, are coming after school to help.
Oh, good.
Yeah. They lowered the legal driving age to 14. Sure helps.
I heard that. I've been rolling bandages all day for the Red Cross. Oh, guess what? Jimmy sent me some nylons from England. I'm so excited. I'm going to save them and wear them for the celebration when he gets home.
What a treat. How nice.
Oh, listen, you work so hard, and I hate to ask, but are you planning on attending the next meeting of the Soldiers Comfort Association? Why, we're planning on sending a large parcel overseas, excuse me, next time. We must have 40 pairs of knit socks and 10 pairs of mitts, and I don't know how many sweaters. I hope Jimmy gets a nice warm pair of my nice warm knit socks.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Barb. How are you? We were just talking about the parcel we're sending overseas. You said you were working on some quilts. Did you have a chance to get them finished?
Yes, I worked on them in the evenings after finishing up over at Jensen's. I think we should have 8 to 10 quilts this time.
Nice.
To answer your question, Jen, I do plan on coming. I'll bring the mitts and socks that I've got at home. I see where the Women's Institute just sent a large parcel last week to the Red Cross.
Yes, they sent quilts and blankets and laundry bags and even pajamas.
And I got some stores to donate some flashlights, some cigarettes, and even a little bit of chocolate.
Oh, nice.
Bill would enjoy that chocolate. Should have a good parcel this time.
Yes.
Did you hear that the IODE raised $660 last month selling quilts? And with it, they were able to buy a $25 war bond to help the government in the war operations.
Oh, those war bonds, yes.
Yeah, I think that's a much better idea than putting your money in the bank. You buy a war bond, and then the government can use it to pay our troops, buy ammunition, get things our soldiers really need.
Yes, exactly. They use our money. Well, they borrow it, actually. And then when the war's over, we can take the bond back and get our money back.
Well, the IODE used some of the money to send to the soldiers' training camps, and the rest they kept back to set up a children's Christmas fund. I think limiting it to 12 and under this year. Oh, heavens knows, those kids could use some cheering up with their dads away.
I know.
Well, ladies, I gotta run. I'm just heading over to the town hall to put in an order for my butter. Did you see that that's where we have to apply now? It was at the Red Cross, but now it's at the town hall, so I'm just on my way over there.
I sure would like to find some sugar.
Oh, me too. I can't find it anywhere.
Oh, me neither. Oh, listen, Mildred, before I go, I hate to ask, but have you heard from your son? I know you've been hopeful.
Yes, we actually got a letter just yesterday. It was full of holes. I guess they just don't want us to know really where he is. Sure wish I knew.
Dear Mother and Father, I hope all is well at home. Tell Betty I received her letter finally. It sure was good to hear from her. Right now, I am somewhere in the Atlantic heading to France at this time. We have coasted up along Africa and Spain and are out of range from the subs. I have been a month at sea, but the cabins are pretty nice, close quarters, and the food is fairly good. Food is not rationed, but the sea is so rough at times that many are seasick, so we aren't eating much anyways. I was made sergeant before we left. Sorry I didn't get a chance to finish this letter before. It's been a week or so since I last wrote. We are not yet close to our destination. Sometimes the days are long. We go out on the deck in our shorts and keep eyes open for aircraft. One morning, it started out as a very cloudy day, and then the sirens went off, and out came a Jerry bomber, a Heinkel 77. We made for our gun positions, and he came in at about 200 feet. I had a Tommy gun astern. He dropped 4 bombs on different ships. There were 12 boats in our fleet. It was tense for a while, but we got him and have continued on. The weather is changing, but it still gets hot in the cabins at night, as we have to keep the portholes closed for blackout. The gray coats will soon be coming as we get closer to our destination. We stopped in Portugal a while back and had some hours off, so Buddy and I went sightseeing. We found a nice restaurant, ordered steak with onions, and a real coffee. I drank 3. A man came in and we talked. He paid for our dinners and then took us out on a little drive and showed us some of the sights. It sure did feel good to be on land. I'm glad I made the Navy instead of the Air Force. I like the practical experience it brings, and I am seeing many places. With much love, Ken.
His spirits are good, and it was good to hear from him, even if the letter was a month old. At least we have some idea now of where he might be.
It sure is.
Yeah.
Oh, what's the matter, Barb? You look troubled.
Oh, I shouldn't be, but I am. Did you see the notice over at the post office looking for young men to sign up for the Air Force?
Yes, I heard that there's a mobile recruiting unit coming to town.
Well, when I read down through the qualifications, my Alan meets them all, including being good at math. He's been waiting for this opportunity to sign up for the Air Force. And our other son, Andrew John, got his call to artillery, and now I just know Alan will be too. I think he feels guilty because so many of his other friends have gone, and he's still here.
I thought I saw him guarding the bridge and the pumping station. I know that St. John headquarters had ordered towns to take care of their resources in case of enemy attack.
He is, but he's in the reserve and has been waiting for his call. I'm so proud of the boys for wanting to fight for their country, but at the same time, they are my boys, and I just feel sick that they have to leave in this fashion. I shouldn't feel selfish.
Now look, we need good men to win this war, and we will, if we all do our part, and it shouldn't take long. But our part is to make sure our boys get what they need.
Oh, wow. Look at this old comic book, Johnny Canuck. It's in black and white. No colored comic books back then, Graham?
Oh, my, I had forgotten about this. This belonged to your great Uncle Mike. In those days, the Canadian government had barred non-essential items from coming into Canada. And so one of those items was colored comic books. And it was really hard on the kids. So the Canadian Publishing Company came to the rescue and started creating these black and white comic books called Canadian Whites. Pretty clever, eh? Well, I will never forget the day that my brother Mike saw this in Keith and Plummer's grocery store. He nearly drove me crazy. But I managed to buy it out of my grocery money.
Who would have thought that a black and white comic would be so cherished? Did they make any other characters besides this Johnny Canuck?
Oh, yes, there was Freelance Dixon of the Mounties and another one. Oh, yes, Nelvania of the Northern Lights. We didn't see that one around much. Very interesting cover, though. You know, war really was hard on children, Maddie. They already missed their fathers and their brothers, and they had to grow up way, way too fast. Way too fast. Playtime was so short, but they tried to do their part. They'd scour for rubber and metal, and they'd sell it for nickels and dimes and buy war bonds.
That just doesn't seem fair.
Gotcha.
Oh, darn it. I want a rematch.
Sorry, Bobby. I can't play much longer. I've got to go home and do my chores. I didn't tell you, but I found some old metal down by Carshill. I'm going to tell Granddad about it. If he can, I hope he can reuse it for war stuff. And if I'm lucky, he'll give me some money for it. Then I can go buy some more war stamps.
Me too. I've been buying when I can. Those stamps will help buy some guns. Oh, Mom wants us to go to Boyer's to pick potatoes until dark. She says we have to. Those potatoes are being sent to Hatfields as food overseas. Who knows? Maybe my brother Kenny will open one of those potato tins that Hatfield sends. Maybe even one that I picked. Oh, Mr. Boyer gave me 5 nickels last week.
No way.
Yeah, 5. Teacher keeps telling me to work hard and the stamps will help the fight. At least I can do this until I'm old enough to join.
When I grow up, I'm going to fly one of those big planes like Uncle Frank. Dad's been gone a long time now. I miss him, and Mom keeps telling me I'm the man of the house, and I can do my part by working hard. But before Dad left, he gave me this. I always think of him when I rub it.
I have this. It's part of a letter that Kenny wrote. He's in the Navy. He wrote and told us enemy planes dropped bombs on them, and he shot back. Betcha he got them. He's a hero, you know. I can't wait till he gets home and I get to see all of his medals. Anyway, I gotta go. See ya.
See ya.
You know, children saw themselves as junior soldiers and felt a great weight on their shoulders, and it probably didn't help any when parents and teachers and other friends were encouraging them to support the home front. My brother Mike, he could tell you the name of every aircraft and ship. He memorized that stuff. He became a cadet.
What's a cadet?
Well, it was a school group, and they would learn how to march and perform drills and fire weapons, and they wore a uniform. And there were girl cadets. I think they have cadets in Woodstock.
Oh, yes. There are cadets in my school. Some of my friends are cadets and go to Woodstock. What was I thinking? I just didn't realize they had them back then.
Mm-hmm.
What's this ticket? It looks like a theater ticket.
It's a very special ticket. One of your great-grandfather's best friends was Frank Dickinson. And back in 1940, they had a party for Frank. He was getting ready to go into the Royal Canadian Air Force as an aero engine mechanic.
What's an aero engine mechanic?
Well, he fixed the engines on airplanes, and he was on an aircraft carrier.
They sold tickets at that party?
No, silly. Before the movies, when we would go to the Capitol Theater, they would play these newsreels called The World in Action. And it was live action shots of the war. And you have to remember, we didn't have, computers and TV to keep us informed with what was going on in the war. So they played that in the place of that. Well, about 4 months after Frank had gone to the war, we learned that there was going to be one of those World in Action reels played in Hartland, and that Frank was going to be on it. Well, sure enough, the reel played, showed the members of the Royal Canadian Air Force landing in England, and there was Frank on the screen, a movie star. But sadly, Frank didn't make it home. I've never been able to bring myself to get rid of this ticket.
Oh, Graham, that is so sad. It truly was hard for those left at home. Though you weren't in battle, it seems like you were fighting your own war of loneliness and hard work and scrimping by.
Don't feel sorry for me, Maddie. At least we were home. Your grandfather didn't talk much about the war, but I knew he never forgot it. He'd lost some very good friends that he'd made in a short time. They had a common bond and they depended on each other. But he came back a different man. He was quiet. He'd lost two of his best friends, Frank and Walter.
My darling, I was different. The things I saw, the things I did, the things I experienced had to go to the grave with me. I often wished I'd have been able to talk with you about them because it bothered me. I saw those visions my entire life. I'll tell you why. I was a member of a special group they recruited here in Canada. They asked for volunteers to go to England to learn to drive landing craft in operations against the enemy coastline. As an 18-year-old, keen to see the world, it sounded exciting. I was thrilled at the opportunity to do my part in the war effort. Didn't think too much about the danger. So I jumped at the chance. And away I went to England to train with other Royal Navy personnel, people who were already had been doing raids along the coast all along. So I met a great bunch of guys, good guys. And as only a bunch of young 18-year-olds can do, we really bonded. We were in a different country, in a different circumstance, didn't know anybody, so we made real good connections. One young lad from the North Shore, his name was Walter. He and I made a real connection. We were interested in the same things. We were about the same age. We came from New Brunswick. We were Canadian. We were proud. And so we had a great time together. Walter was in the infantry. I was in the Navy. As a Navy person driving landing craft, it was my responsibility to put the boys ashore. And so in our training, they assigned a group of people to my landing craft. And I got to know them real well. The landing craft was a steel barge-like boat. It's about 35 feet long, steered like a bathtub, but it was specially designed to land on the beach. And this was particularly important because of the way things were in Europe. The enemy controlled the ports, they controlled the docks. The only way that we could get back was to land on the beach. And of course, the Navy ships could not land on the beach because they needed too much water. But the landing craft was designed to do that. There were 3 people who ran the landing craft: me, who was the commander of the craft and who drove. There was a man at the back who looked after the engine, an engineer, and then there was a deckhand. So we trained hard. We formed a real bond. And then the Allied command decided that they needed to have a test run. They needed to find out what the German armaments were, what their setup was, what things they had put in place. So they determined that they would raid on the port of Dieppe. It was called Operation Jubilee. And the plan was that we would go ashore, or we would take our landing, we would go ashore under darkness, go on, do a little bit of reconnoitering, and then we would pull them boys back off the beach. So they loaded our landing craft on troop ships with the troop, and we went across the English Channel, and the big ships anchored off the coast, put the landing craft over the side. The boys climbed down ropes and got into the boat. Well, we were excited because this was the first opportunity we had to get into fighting. But I got to tell you, that changed real quick. It wasn't very long. We got within about a mile of the shore, and the artillery, the enemy artillery on the coast opened up. And of course, the noise was just incredibly deafening. But anyway, we kept going. And we got about 100 yards from the shore, and the enemy had set up machine gun batteries, pillboxes. And they had machine guns. And they were up on a hill, and they were looking right down on the beach. There was absolutely no cover on that beach. Well, the bullets were flying around our head. They were hitting onto the armor-plated steel of the landing craft. It was like being inside a tin can and somebody throwing rocks at it. I was scared to death. The other boys were pretty quiet too. But we had our orders, and so we headed to shore. We went on the beach, we dropped the door, the boys ran down the beach. We raised the door and backed off and sat in the shallow waters, waited and I watched the boys go up the beach. There was barbed wire. There was iron crosses. There was no cover. The machine gun fire was just incredible. I saw men just drop. So we backed off and we sat there. The commander said, well, we got to get the boys out of there because pretty obviously they were expecting us. The fire was intense. So they said, go back in and see if you can pick them up. So we tried, but we just couldn't get in. So we backed off, And they called for the naval artillery offshore to send some to fire at the beaches. They called in the Air Force, and they bombed them. A couple hours later, we tried again. Well, this time we were able to get in. So I drove my landing craft into the point where we were supposed to pick the men up. I dropped the drawer, and I sat there. Nobody came. I had put 35 men onto the beach, including my friend Walter. Not one of them made it back to my boat. Not one. So we waited, and then we got a signal from the ship that we needed to back off. We had to leave them. The feeling in the pit of my stomach I cannot begin to describe. But we had no choice, so we pulled off and went back to England, leaving those men on the beach, bodies strewn everywhere. The Allies said it was a great success. We had landed, and we'd come back. They had picked up a lot of intelligence about the German defenses. They knew what they were going to face. And a few years later, when they went back for D-Day, some of the things we learned helped out. But from my point of view, it was a real failure. I lost 35 friends. My best friend, Walter.
I'm just so glad he came home.
I'm glad he came home too, Graham, or I wouldn't be here. Great-granddad left as a young man just starting to work. What happened when he came back?
Well, he came home in late 1945, and things were still pretty humbling. But the Veterans Affairs Department offered funding for schools and trades and businesses, and your great-grandfather, Kenny, he decided to go into an electrical small appliance business. And your grandmother, she was on her way at that time. Mr. Hatfield had become a member of Parliament, and he was fighting to get the veterans a pension. And it really all worked out.
Well, that makes sense. He kind of started where he left off. Still must have been awful. War's not pretty. Poor great-granddad. You know, I thought this assignment was going to be boring. Who's this?
Well, this is Walter, the one we had talked about earlier. Your great-granddad had been watching your father surf the net and was very interested in having him help him find some information and pictures of the war. That is what they call it, right? Surf the net?
Yes, Graham.
Okay, well, anyway, when they were looking, they found this picture of Walter, and your grandfather was so excited.
Really, Graham? Why was he so excited?
Well, when he was 18, he was on a mission to France where he drove a landcraft, and his job was to let the soldiers out on enemy territory. And one of those soldiers was Walter. Well, it was a pretty sad day for your grandfather, Kenny, when he had to leave and go back to England and leave Walter behind in enemy territory. And I don't think he ever got over it. But that's all the details we had. No more was said.
Really, Graham? He had to leave his friend behind?
He did. But then we found out that this picture was taken after the battle and that Walter had made it out alive. Well, your grandfather was so excited, and what made it even better was back in 1987, the Hartland Legion hosted a Veterans Day celebration, and your great-grandfather Kenny and Walter were reunited.
Walter!
Kenny!
How can you simply say thank you? Okay.
On behalf of the cast and crew, we would like to present this to Anne for taking her time and energy and putting up with all her foolishness.
Okay, a special thank you to the cast and the director for all their dedicated hours of rehearsal. You, the audience, has just witnessed life in Hartland during World War II, where the role of those who stayed at home played as an important role on the victory as those who actually fought in this war. At this time, I would wish to call to the stage Jim Dee, Don Oliver, Doris Kennedy, and Leah DeJong, Chairwoman of the Board for the Dr. Walter Chestnut Library, for a special presentation. Jim Dee was born in Aroostook Junction, New Brunswick, and came to Hartland High School in 1966 to teach until he retired in 1999. He is a past president of the Royal Canadian Branch No. 24 of Hartland, and his father, Norman Dee, was a member of the Carleton York Regiment of World War II. In retirement, Jim began doing genealogy research for various people, and in the paper he began to notice the number of soldiers that went to war from this community. He found an honor roll list at the Legion of about 230 names, and has since expanded this list to almost 2,000 names. Donald Oliver, a Hartland native, has also taken a special interest in genealogy that led him to cross paths with Doris, as they are related. The two of them began to help Jim compile pictures of as many veterans as they could through papers, social media, and phone calls. His technology skills came in handy to not only give you the earlier presentation, but helped in the preparation of the veterans' pictures. Doris Kennedy, another Hartland native, has been collecting Hartland pictures since 1982, and not only does research, but interviews various families to complete the stories of her research. The three teamed together about 2 years ago to promote the 150th anniversary of Canada by playing tribute to the veterans.
So on behalf of Donnie and Jimmy and myself and the town of Hartland, we wish to present this display to go to the Dr. Walter Chestnut Library.
I have a book that we're going to donate to the Hartland Library.
Thank you very much.
Even sign it for it.
So the display and the book will have a permanent home in the Dr. Walter Chestnut Library, so we, the public, can enjoy them both. Let us stand in recognition of Canada's 150th birthday and sing "O Canada." Once everyone is seated, your dessert will be brought to you by Miss Hartland, Emma Little, contestants from last night's Miss Hartland contest, and other young ladies from the community. The ladies are also going to serve you a selection of sweets chosen from a World War II cookbook when many foods were rationed, especially sugar. It seems that raisins were used quite often as their sweetener. So please be sure to try them. Recipes will be with the assortments. And a special thanks to Kathy Hoxter-Carton for her sugar cookies and to Value Foods for their generous donation of sweets. Please enjoy your dessert and feel free to mingle with your others. Go over to the many displays and meet the cast. I'd also like to take a moment to remind you of this week's upcoming Potato Festival events. Wednesday is children's activities at the Hartland Arena. Thursday, Little Miss Hartland at Hartland Community School, and adult fun at Hartland Golf and Country Club at Senior Park. Friday, homecoming supper at Hartland United Baptist Church. Saturday, a children's parade, the town parade, the Legion's bean and salad supper, and fireworks at 10 p.m. Sunday, a gospel concert. And Monday, New Brunswick Day on the longest covered bridge in the world. This day features early morning yoga, breakfast buffet, a market and craft sale on the bridge, where you can expect jazz bands, line dancers, singers, local talent, and food vendors. Bring your lawn chair and spend the day. Color blast, duck race, antique cars, and an all-day silent auction. Details of the events are in the flyers made available at the desk in the entrance. At this time, I'd like to ask Tracy DeMerchant to come forward.
I wonder if Doris Kennedy might come to the stage, please. Are you laughing at me? An old lady? That's so not nice.
She almost matches me.
Well, Doris, don't make me cry. This is an amazing woman. Can you give her a round of applause, please? She has to this town and telling the history of Hartland is amazing and so appreciated. We have loved doing this play and working with Doris. She's a true lady, and we appreciate her very much. Thank you. Oh, and Miss Anne, would you come up again? Come up here. Come on. She's worthy of getting flowers twice. I assure you, she has had a very difficult crew to work with, and we so appreciate her.
Difficult, hardly. They were wonderful.
Although she is to blame for this. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
A round of applause.
And one last word. Would Mayor Melanson please come forward?
Thank you very much. I've been accused of being a little too long-winded lately, so I'm going to be really short. All I wanted to do is bring greatest welcomes. And the fact is, I think that you had a tremendous group of people doing, I think we could start an acting school and a career here. I think it's really well done. I really enjoyed it. But I guess a few nights ago I was listening to TED Talks, and one of the things that came up was this director of classical music, and he was talking about motivation. And he said, you know, as a director, I don't make one bit of music, but I do motivate people to make music. And I think a great deal of thanks and special attention should go to Doris as the director of this wonderful thing. So thank you very much, Doris.
And with that, it concludes our evening. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking part in Canada's birthday. We hope you have enjoyed it. And again, please take time to mingle with your friends and make your way over to the displays. Drive safe.